Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today for my review of The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan, book 2 in the Wheel of Time series. I only have like 13 more books to go. I should get there pretty soon. Um, First off, I just want to say sorry about only having one video up last week. I had some technical difficulties, and also with the holiday, I just didn't get around to making more. Hopefully, this week I can do a little bit better. We will see what happens. So, I'm also going to be doing this review a little bit differently on The Great Hunt than I did for Eye of the World, which was book 1. I'm going to get a little bit more specific into characters and plot because I think it's important, so there will be some spoilers. So if you haven't read this book and don't want to know anything at all about it, please read the book and then come back and watch this review. Otherwise, I am going to get started. So, The Great Hunt does a great job, just like The Eye of the World did, in being a standalone story. So, in other words, you could read this book on its own, and there is a beginning, middle, and end that is satisfactory, in my opinion. As a matter of fact, I would say the ending of this book's a bit more epic than the first book, but this book does an even better job, in my opinion, of fleshing out the world and making you want to continue into the series, and I can hardly wait to start book 3, The Dragon Reborn. And there's a couple reasons why I think The Great Hunt is a superior book to The Eye of the World. First of all, the book does feel more original. While there's still a few Lord of the Rings references here and there, which I mentioned in the first book, I feel like overall the world feels more unique and just more interesting as a whole as the first book. Robert Jordan, the pace is still a bit deliberate. I think the pacing is much better in this book. There were only a few chapters where I thought there were some lulls, but it's still a very deliberate book. There's still a ton of description. You'll get descriptions of towns, scenery, and characters, things like that. So if you don't like a more deliberate pace with very few reveals, that kind of just come here and there, this could be a tough book for you. But if you don't mind really enveloping yourself and getting kind of lost in a world when you read a book, I think Robert Jordan does a great job. And I kind of like that style. I'm definitely getting used to it. So I enjoyed this book a lot. I think the characters are better and more rounded in this book as well. I mentioned in the first book, I thought a lot of the characters were somewhat interesting and had potential, but they felt a bit samey, and I thought that would get better, and what I suspected was true in my opinion. I think the lead character, Rand, is much better in the second book, and I just think almost all the characters, with a few exceptions, have just become kind of more unique and more individual, and it's much easier to separate them now from each other. I hope that makes sense. Also, I really enjoyed more focus on the villains in this book. The villains were okay in the first book. They were kind of just there for a plot point, but I thought they were much more developed, and I enjoyed some of the new villains like Leandrin and Celine. And by the way, I hope I'm pronouncing all these names right. I'm going to try, but some of these names are tough to say, and I've also heard them pronounced many different ways, and I'm not sure which ways are definitive, but I will try my best with the names. So the one issue I do have with this book, well, actually I have two issues, but the main issue that I have is it's still not a perfect book, is that the plot of this book is only about as good as the first book. And the reason I say this is the book is called The Great Hunt, and the main plot of this book is all the characters trying to hunt for this horn, which is supposed to be important in this battle to save the world. There's also a dagger attached to one of the characters too, and these are such important items, yet they're never really guarded well. They're never hidden. I mean, if you think there's an item that's supposed to save the world, you would think people would do a better job of guarding it. It's kind of amusing how this horn just kind of trades places back and forth in this book. People just like go in a room and grab it. It's kind of a silly plot. It almost feels like the plot of this book is just there to give us a reason to go from place to place and expand the world more and introduce more characters, which didn't really bother me that much. It's not a deal breaker, but if you're someone who likes like genius plots, I have to be fair and say this book doesn't have it. I'm just so immersed in the world building and the characters at this point that it didn't bother me. But I have to admit, I think some of the plotting could have been a bit better, and I'm hoping that improves in future books. Also, they did something in this book. They brought back this supporting character from the first book named Tom, and you weren't quite sure if he was alive or not. And I don't mind them bringing a character like them back, but if you're going to pull this "they're still alive" trick, I wish they would have done more with this character. This character felt like they were brought back just to remind you they were maybe alive. I'm sure he'll probably appear in a future book. but there's a few chapters with this character, and the character doesn't really contribute much to the story or really even do much, and I thought this could have been handled a lot better. But that's kind of a minor nitpick. It doesn't really ruin the book. But with these books being deliberately paced as they are, I don't think that this was really totally necessary. There's also the sea captain character that gets a few chapters as well, and I don't really care for this character. Feels a little bit like a cliche and doesn't really add much to the story either. But on that note, all the other characters I think get great progression in this book. So Rand, the main character, I really like a lot. He's one of my favorites. Now I've seen people criticize that they don't like the fact that he's kind of in denial about his accepting his destiny as the Dragon Reborn, but I actually find that to be refreshing. I find it kind of silly sometimes in books or TV shows or movies where someone's like a chosen one or they have this destiny and they just accept it like in 2 seconds. I think it feels much more realistic and much more interesting to have this character kind of go through a whole book of denial before they kind of ultimately accept this power toward the end of the book. I actually thought that was great. Others may have a different opinion because they do focus on it quite a bit, but I actually found this character trait very interesting, and I'm really interested to see where Rand's going to go from here as far as character progression. There's also his friend Matt, who's kind of linked to this dagger and kind of getting more and more crazy trying to find this dagger. And I found this character to be kind of funny but kind of annoying in the first book. I found him surprisingly much more tolerable in this book. And even though he didn't get a ton of time, he got, I think, a little bit more time dedicated to him in the first book. I look forward to seeing where this character goes in the future. The other main character, Perrin, was a bit underused in this book. Nothing terrible or anything. I just thought there could have been a little bit more. But I guess when you have as many characters as these books do, somebody's going to get a little bit of the short straw, I guess is a good way to say it. Now onto the female characters who I thought were much improved in this book. Nynaeve, I hope I'm saying her name correctly, is probably my favorite character of the first 2 books. When she goes through her Aes Sedai training, which is kind of like the magic in this world, I thought those chapters were amazing. And I loved learning more about the magic systems and everything in this world. I actually would have preferred a little bit more of that and a little less hunting for this horn, which was kind of silly, although kind of interesting at the same time. But I think she's my favorite character so far, and that's because to me she's the most complex, and I'm not sure where her character is going to go next. The other main female character, Eguin, again, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right. I'm sorry for all you loyal fans if I'm saying this incorrectly. I promise I'll get it right in the future. She's a little better in this book as well. There were a couple plot twists with her I didn't see coming, and I enjoyed her character overall. Min is another great female character who I loved, who kind of stands out as being a bit different, and her being so closely linked to Rand really surprised me. There's another female character, Elaine, but I think she needs more character development before I can make a judgment one way or the other. Also, 2 main characters from the first book, Lan and Moraine, kind of just have brief roles in this book, and I suspect their roles will be bigger again in the future, but the roles they had were fine. So overall, this book, The Great Hunt, I thought was a pretty big improvement over The Eye of the World, which in and of itself I thought was a pretty decent book. So I'm really looking forward to The Dragon Reborn, which I think, from what I've heard, is even a slightly better book than The Great Hunt. Before we get into books 4, 5, and 6, which a lot of people seem to think are the best in the series. So I look forward to continuing. I might take a short break before I read the next book, or I might go right into it. But when I finish The Dragon Reborn, I will do a review for it on this channel. And there will be many more videos, many more television reviews coming soon as well. As always, thanks for your support and thanks for watching.